What's up, everybody? Welcome on into a Tuesday version of The Slate. Great to be here with you. Adam Kaufman, Gary and Thorne, Matt LaMarca, and of course, Buddy the Elf. Right in your face.
Terrifying.
Screaming. It really is, especially when you just leave it sitting on a chair for months on end. And every time you walk into a dark room, you just see a face staring back at you. This is a holiday edition of this particular program. You can tell because of this shirt, Gary's hat, and LaMarca's sexy voice. We'll be hearing Sexy Christmas to play us out a little bit later on in the show. How are you guys?
I'm wonderful. Another 4-1 week on the picks.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Did you remember to submit them this time?
I'm done with that. I gave up on that. So yeah, I'm good. Let's keep it rolling. Weird NFL week. Feels like everything's a little bit extra condensed. But you know what? I'll enjoy that on Sunday when I don't have any work to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously different, with this past week starting to get the Saturday games again. And now looking at it this week, we still have a regular Thursday. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then basically the Saturday, Sunday has flipped. The vast majority of games around the NFL, as people well know who are tuning in, I'm sure, are taking place on Christmas Eve. And then you will have some on Sunday, Christmas Day, but that'll look a little different and largely belong to the NBA, as it typically does every year as well. So there's a lot of stuff on the table. We got Eamon, Daniel behind the scenes, all of you out there. If anyone has any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, whatever it may be, hit us up. We're here for you, at least for the next 25 minutes or so. It's somewhat an abbreviated show after the Madden simulation took us to overtime. So let's quickly, guys, take a little look back on last night and what was a game that belonged to the running backs for the Packers. AJ Dillon, a couple of touchdowns, and he is out of concussion protocol, so that's good news for him and the Packers going forward, and any fantasy owners if you're still alive in your postseason as well. Aaron Jones, by the end anyway, had himself a good night. Aaron Rodgers did enough. And the defending champion Rams are a 10-loss team not going to the postseason. So the Packers' playoff hopes are alive, slim, but alive nonetheless at 6-8. How should we feel about this team, Garion?
The Packers, generally underwhelmed, I would say. I guess this is the most dangerous version of their offense. David Bakhtiari's injury notwithstanding, they are probably at better health currently than they've been for most of the season. They've got Romeo Doubs back. Christian Watson finally didn't score a touchdown. Math came through for us last night, who maybe faded Christian Watson a little bit. Alan Lazard is healthy. AJ Dillon passed concussion protocol this morning, so it seems like he's going to be fine for week 16. Like, they've got all their components in line. And yet still pretty mediocre. Like, there's just not a ton to love here. Their defense is inherently flawed. The Rams are possibly the worst team in the NFL at exploiting the Packers' biggest weakness, which is the Packers cannot stop the run. The Rams can't run the football at all. So every game is a bad matchup for this version of the Rams, but in particular, this was not a game I think the Rams ever had a chance of winning, particularly it being Green Bay in December. Was not overly surprised by the score or the results or how we got there or that it was mostly unwatchable. The Packers are fine, but they lost their chance to be in the playoffs long ago.
I'm assuming, LaMarca, that when it comes to the Rams, there is no takeaway. This is just a lost season. Obviously Cooper Kupp has been down for weeks. Matt Stafford has been hurt. They've had issues at running back all season. You win the championship last year. This year, you're not quite the same. Next year's a new year kind of thing.
I mean, I would say the one takeaway is that if you were hoping that Baker Mayfield was going to be the guy, still a long ways to go towards proving that. Didn't play particularly well last night. He did have the storybook 98-yard touchdown drive to win a game a few weeks ago. But ultimately, I think that both of these teams are in similar spots. I mean, the Rams are in maybe the worst spot of any team in the league, being that they have no draft picks for the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. But the Packers aren't doing much better. I mean, they have an old declining quarterback. They managed to beat the Rams and the Bears the past 2 weeks. Congratulations. I think that the Packers' chances of making the playoffs are still extremely slim. You can get them at at minus 1,200 to miss the playoffs. I know that that's not an appealing bet for most people. You don't want to risk, 1,200 to win 100 or whatever, sort of version of that you bet is. But I think that that's a pretty good value. I put the Packers odds at making the playoffs at like maybe 2%.
Why don't we take a little look ahead? Just again, in the interest of time, we're really kind of bouncing around because we could talk more about the Rams and Packers, but
We really don't have to. They're terrible.
I don't think most people probably want to. So let's kind of turn our attention a little bit onto Week 16 in the NFL, which kicks off in as we sit here, 51 hours ballpark, and we rag on Thursday night games with good reason. It's been that case for years. It's typically not a very good game, not very compelling, but I don't know what this one is going to look like. I can tell you this much: on paper it is at least a game that means a lot, taking place in the Meadowlands between the Jets and the Jaguars, who are surging of late. Both of these teams, you look at the AFC standings, they are both in the hunt, on the outside looking in when it comes to the postseason. Your 1 through 7, your 4 through 7 is really kind of bounced around a little bit with obviously the Titans, the Ravens, the Chargers, the Dolphins. The Patriots are right there at 7-7 with a very tough schedule coming up. They're technically in the 8th spot just because they hold a tiebreaker on the Jets. But then you have New York, who is 7-7, and the Jags right behind them, Jacksonville at 6-8. So again, very, very important game when it comes to playoff implications as we get later here in the regular season. So Lamarca, what are the expectations for this one? You being the Jets fan amongst us.
I think that the Jets are in just a really bad spot to make the playoffs at this point. They were in a position, I think, where they needed to win last week at home against Detroit. They were leading, late in the game and allowed a 51-yard touchdown on a 4th down. And I think that kind of does it for them, to be honest. They're 7-7. I don't see them winning a ton of their remaining games. Home Jacksonville, at Seattle, at Miami. I could very well see 1 and 2 in those contests. And the Zach Wilson thing is a real problem for this team. His overall numbers from last week, if you were playing fantasy or just looking at the box scores, they don't look bad, right? He had 317 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, but he's still missing throws that an NFL quarterback just has to be able to make. Too many drives ended because he was missing open receivers. And he's just proven, I think, at this point that he is not the guy for this team. And maybe, with another offseason, he can come back and he'll change that narrative. But I think that, when you factor in the benching, and I don't know if all of his teammates necessarily believe in him, I just have a hard time getting behind this team against a red hot Jaguar squad. The Jets still do play great defense, but who else plays great defense? The Dallas Cowboys, and the Jaguars just hung 40 on them. So I don't see the Jets being able to keep up with a red hot Trevor Lawrence in this game.
Garen, what are your expectations here?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of a strength versus strength spot, as Matt was alluding to at the end there, where the Jaguars' offense has looked fantastic. It seems like they're really starting to comprehend what Doug Peterson is trying to do. I think a really good sort of, how they say with NBA coaches, like their out of timeout actions are a really good way to tell, like, sort of how their offensive mind works and how the team is really endorsing what they're trying to sell. I think red zone offense is a pretty good indication of just how good at play calling, but also play designing a coach happens to be. And some of the stuff the Jaguars are able to do on like tight red zone plays, 2-point conversions in particular, like Trevor Lawrence is really starting to understand how to run this offense in the red zone. It's getting a little scary for non-Jaguars fans, but I think the one area I'd be a little worried, because I tend to side with Matt here. I think the Jaguars are in a really nice spot. I would be inclined to, take them as an underdog in this spot. That seems great. They do not generate a lot of pressure. They have the third lowest adjusted sack rate in the NFL entering week 16, which, you know, maybe that's not the biggest issue in the world, seeing as how the Jets offensive line is very beat up. It might not matter. They might just be able to get pressure on a unit that's a little under fire anyway. But for as bad as Zach Wilson tends to be, and sort of disregarding the last play he made in that game, which was actually a pretty miraculous play that only someone like Zach Wilson could make, he's a much different quarterback when he's sitting in a clean pocket. Small samples, and, you know, take it with a grain of salt if you want, but he was top 10 in the league EPA per drop back in a clean pocket this year, which makes sense. He's a young quarterback with a great arm. Like, if you give him time to process, you know, 3, 4, 5 seconds, I think he'll be fine. But any modicum of pressure and he falls apart and starts making some of the most head-scratching decisions you could possibly imagine. I mean, that interception he threw against the Lions to start the second half, I have no idea what he was thinking. And then on the next drive, he proceeded to throw up like the dictionary definition of a prayer. Like, he was being pulled down. I don't know where he was trying to throw this ball, but he got so lucky that the Lions safety, I think it was Elliott, just slipped and fell. And then Michael Carter was able to like jump up and catch this ball for a 10-yard gain. But that's an interception like 99 times out of 100. He just makes just the weirdest decisions sometimes. So when you're a Jets team where your offensive margin for error is already so small, he is a guy who just provides so much margin of error that I don't know if they can survive it.
Selfishly, I'm just upset that Bam Knight had a very negative impact on my Sunday this past week.
Still got a bunch of carries though. Like, if you're someone who needs to use Bam Knight week 16 in fantasy, like, the volume was still there. That's at least something you can kind of hang your hat on.
Yeah, just didn't do anything with it. So as we, you know, this is normally reserved for the Thursday show, and there will be a Thursday show, but just because the three of us are together right now, if you're looking ahead to plays that you really like DFS wise for the $1.5 million Thursday night showdown contest, $500,000 going to first contest available to you for $15 in the DraftKings lobby. Who do we really like, Gary? Who stands out most for you?
I mean, I just said his name, but I do think Bam Knight is a good place to start. Maybe you don't captain him just because there is a little bit of uncertainty with, you know, Michael Carter made a couple things happen in that last game. Maybe these snaps start to differentiate a little bit. Knight hasn't been overly involved in the passing attack, at least not since that Minnesota game. So I would say probably not captain material. However, if we're talking about someone who's getting roughly 15 to 18 carries per game, I think that's a very reasonable price point for a running back in that narrative. If he can get a couple goal line carries, all the better. Jacksonville has not been particularly good at defending running backs so far this season. They've been pretty generous from a fantasy perspective. So I just think for what his role actually is, Knight is a little underpriced on this slate.
LaMarca, your favorite one or two?
I think Travis Etienne is the best stud. The Jets defense, while it has been very good against the pass, they're kind of just, you know, average against the run. Etienne looked great last week against the Cowboys. I think that he is a guy that, you know, probably deserves to be priced above 10K given his workload at this point. So you're getting a slight discount there. But I will say that my favorite per dollar option on this slate is Elijah Moore. Played on 100% of the Jets snaps last week. He's got at least 6 targets now in 3 straight games. I feel pretty good about his talent. Like, he was really good as a rookie when given opportunities. So I think being able to get that guy at a sub 5K price tag is pretty appealing.
All right. Well, just a taste of what is to come, obviously coming up on Thursday night between these two teams. When we look back on the DraftKings Sportsbook and you know, you don't have to worry about, I don't know what kind of line movement over under that type of thing is going to change in the next 24, 48 hours, if at all. Obviously right now it's virtual pick'em, but when it comes to kind of LaMarca, what we were talking about before in terms of just the playoff standings as we sit here right now, whether it's, the Chargers in 6, the Dolphins in 7, the Patriots who do not have a good road, the Jets, you said it's an uphill battle. Jaguars are in the conversation as well. The Raiders and Browns are both 6 and 8, Steelers as well. It's a whole collection of teams that are still technically, mathematically in the mix.
We should specify though, like the Jaguars, it's not about getting a wild card spot. It's
just win the division. Yeah, absolutely. But I guess what I'm thinking about when it comes to, make miss playoff odds, more so than Super Bowl odds for any of these teams, but make miss playoff odds available on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Anybody you really like or dislike, a number that you like, I guess is a better way to put it.
The team that I feel the best about earning a wild card spot in the AFC is the Chargers, but they are priced very aggressively at -1,000. The Chargers end the year with the Colts, the Rams, and the Broncos. So really not much to worry about. I feel pretty good that they are going to hold on to one of those wild card spots. And then I feel decent enough that the Dolphins and the loser of the AFC North will get the other two.
Darian?
Yeah, pretty similar thought process. I think we talked about this last week, that if you start breaking down the Chargers' remaining schedule, really the last hurdle was the Tennessee Titans. And after that, I believe the Chargers can actually clinch a playoff spot this weekend. I think if they win and like the Patriots and the Jets and the Dolphins all lose, they clinch a playoff spot, just because there's so much overlap in the final 2 weeks between those three teams anyway.
I'm just looking at 538, Garion, and they have a cool little feature where you can like give the teams wins or losses. So if the Chargers win against the Colts, their make playoff odds per 538 go up to 99%.
Yeah, sounds about right. So at this point, like he was saying, there's not a lot of value there. I also would say I'm relatively confident the Dolphins make the playoffs. For me, the move should have been when they were 8-3 and about to go on a 3-game West Coast road trip, finished with a snowy date in Buffalo. I should have bet them then not to make the playoffs. Hedging your happiness, look into it. But at this point, they get a home game against the Packers. They got a 2-day rest advantage in that spot, considering they played Saturday, the Packers played Monday. The Dolphins have been much better at home this season. I don't really trust the Packers, as we just went over. I think they win that game. And considering what happens, if the Jets lose on Thursday and if the Patriots lose the Bengals, which I would put money on, I think the Dolphins only have to win one of their final 2 games against either the Patriots or the Jets to make the playoffs in that scenario. So I do think I think we're sort of settled on what the AFC playoff picture actually is. There might be some movement. The Ravens could still move up or down. Like them just squeaking out those 2 games in week 13 and week 14 was massive. Like, I just don't think that lower pack is going to be able to catch them. But yeah, I think the 7 AFC playoff teams are pretty much settled at this point.
Well, with the exception of the AFC,
right?
South.
Jaguars.
I think
Titans,
that's a pretty legitimate coin flip in my eyes at this point.
Yeah, sorry, I should say aside from the AFC South. Yes,
I like us to be a full service show, not just DFS or even obviously sports betting, but season long playoffs are happening in the NFL for most people. I mean, if you're still alive, obviously, then you're in the playoffs, potentially even the championship round coming up this week. And there are a lot of injury concerns around the NFL, whether it's, Jonathan Taylor might have helped carry your team to the playoffs. Well, he was just placed on IR today. His season is over. We don't know yet if Lamar Jackson's going to play, which, raises that question, that Tyler Huntley question still in Baltimore. Dallas Goedert is coming back. That's good news, obviously, if you've been stashing him on IR with the ability to return. But I guess what I'm wondering from you guys is, because, you've got your own teams to worry about as well, who should people be chasing this week on the waiver wire, free agency pickups, a good, sort of streaming play that might carry you either to a championship or to the final round?
I guess what I'll say is this, and this is just my personal experience of, if you've got a good fantasy team, what is most likely the decision you might have to make on the waiver wire this week? Or what have you been maybe doing with the waiver wire the entirety of the season? You've probably been streaming defenses. this is just a good week for streaming defenses. You have a situation where, I'm in a league where the Broncos were dropped recently, probably because they had to play the Chiefs not too long ago. You've got really both the Jets or the Jaguars. The Jets probably not available, but the Jaguars defense widely available. You could easily play them on a short week. There was one other team that I think was in a really nice spot. I'm just trying to find them right now. Titans. Yeah. Titans. And they might be owned. They're pretty popular. I guess the other thing I would say, I guess you could go Rams or Broncos. That was kind of the thought process. That's just going to be a low scoring game. And then if you are someone who's been streaming quarterbacks, I really wouldn't be that afraid of Gardner Minshew. I think this is one, he's not as good a dual threat quarterback, obviously, as Jalen Hurts, but he's someone who can get you some points on the ground. He's got a little bit of rushing upside. And I mean, this is kind of the thing, right? We've been talking for so much of the season about how easy the Eagles' schedule has been, how good the team around Jalen Hurts is. I still think he brings something to that team and elevates the ceiling of that team, but this is an ideal spot for like a quad A quarterback to be dropped into. And I think Gardner Minshew's probably like the best quad A quarterback we got going. That dude's going to be a backup in this league for like 20 years. So
would you rather, just because obviously he really hasn't played all year, would you rather stream Gardner Minshew versus, obviously with Jalen Hurts potentially being out, as opposed to, I don't know, Daniel Jones is probably available. Brock Purdy, I'm sure, is available. Aaron Rodgers is probably available, and he's not.
I don't think Aaron Rodgers is available. Maybe he could be.
I bet he is in some leagues.
I mean, Rodgers is a pretty nice matchup, nice weather. Look, I think Minshew's better than Purdy. Jones,
Marco, you'd go Danny Dimes.
Yeah, with the matchup against the Vikings, absolutely.
It is a pretty good matchup.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I agree with a lot of what Garion said about Minshew. I do think that he's one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league, but he's got to play Dallas. And Dallas is just about as tough a matchup as you can ask for. I know Trevor Lawrence put it on them last week, but
and he learned everything he knew from Gardner Minshew.
They get after the quarterback so well. That matchup would scare me a little.
What about for people that might have Taylor? Like, is this if he's even available? Like, are people running after Zach Moss this week? I mean, is that the play in the Indy backfield, or just in general? Do you have a favorite pickup, LaMarca?
Yeah, I'm gonna pivot over to receiver. I really like Marquise Goodwin for Seattle this week. With no Tyler Lockett, now you get Goodwin in basically an every down role. Going into Kansas City against a team that really is terrible on defense. And for all the issues that Seattle has had recently, they are still very good at throwing the football. So I think it is a very good spot to stream a guy like Marquise Goodwin, who has kind of already been solid for the Seahawks of late anyway. So I think he is a priority add if you are looking for help at receiver or in the flex.
All right, before we go, we have a few minutes. Let's quickly mix in a little NBA. It's a lighter slate tonight, just 5 games. You have some studs in solid spots, whether it's Nick Jokic, Ja Morant, both in very solid spots, and obviously the most expensive plays available, both north of 10K. In fact, Jokic is damn near 12K. Tyler Hero is in a good. Yeah, I mean he's crazy. Chris Paul, Bam Adebayo. Well, Porzingis isn't as attractive.
He might not play either.
Yeah, exactly. But Jalen Brunson, for your Knicks, LaMarca is in a great spot tonight.
I don't claim the Knicks.
Well, I'm claiming the Knicks for you right now. Who do you like tonight?
Yeah, I'm gonna just play Jokic. I'm gonna play Jokic because the guy may be an alien. Like, normally when we talk about like freaks of, athletic NBA freaks, we're talking about guys like Giannis or LeBron who look like they were designed in a lab to play basketball. If not for Jokic being 7 feet tall, you would think this guy was like just extremely unimpressive. And yet he's out here doing something that no one else can do. At least 80 in 3 of his last 4 games. So he may triple double. He may 30-30. He may score 40 points. Who knows? Like, the guy can literally do everything. He's probably also dropping off presents down at the local kids hospital, and he's going to help Santa fly the sleigh on Christmas. So, like, there's just nothing he can't do that would impress me at this point. Like, he's Bill Simmons has this thing he talks about with the Tyson zone, where you read a headline about a player and it literally can't surprise you anymore. Like Antonio Brown, you could write anything about that guy and it wouldn't faze anybody. I'm at that point with Nikola Jokic, but in terms of his box scores.
Gary, and I'm sure you agree with all the Joker talk. Anyone you would add to the list, though?
Yeah, I mean, Joker, number 1. I agree with that. I would also say, if we're just talking studs, like Julius Randle's also in a fantastic spot tonight. He's been in his own groove. 40 DraftKings points in 6 straight games with a high of nearly 70. That was against the Hawks a couple weeks back. Playing really, really well. Someone whose usage rate hovering around 32% for the Knicks. Golden State, also a pretty good matchup. The defense has gotten slightly better the last week or so, but it's pace. They have the 2nd highest pace in the NBA in the month of December. This should be a slightly more up-tempo game than the Knicks are maybe sometimes accustomed to. That's great for someone who just racks up the counting stats like Julius Randle does. I think at 9-1, he's in a really good spot. Also would shout out Jalen Duren for the Pistons, just playing a ton of minutes. He's still less than 5K, which makes almost no sense. He's got double-digit rebounds in 6 straight games. No Kelly Olynyk tonight for the Jazz, a team that already doesn't have the most threatening front court in the NBA. I think Duren can really do some damage tonight.
All right. Well, we've basically got to go. I want to wish everybody, obviously, a happy holidays, happy Hanukkah if you celebrate, Merry Christmas with that on the horizon. For all of us, the show is not going anywhere, but I don't know what combination of us will be on. Certainly not the 3 of us all together for the rest of this week. So it's been a pleasure to be with you throughout, obviously, this holiday month. Before we go, though, our thanks to Eamon, to Daniel. Daniel, if we could one-shot LaMarca, and LaMarca, if you could just sing us off with a little sexy Christmas, that would just, I can't think of a better way to take us into the holiday season.
It's sexy Christmas, sexy Christmas, sexy Christmas time. Only comes round once a year. The holidays are here. Merry Christmas, everybody.
See you later.